Undercover CEO pretends to be poor to test waitress kindness. What happens next will shock you. Daniel Kingston sat on the cold pavement outside Kingston's fine dining, his own restaurant. His usual tailored suits and polished shoes were replaced by ragged clothes and scuffed sneakers. A beanie covered his neatly styled hair, and his face had a few streaks of dirt to make his disguise more convincing. To the world, Daniel was a billionaire, the owner of one of the most successful restaurant chains in the country. But today, he was just another homeless man looking for a meal. He had always believed that kindness was the true test of character. Over the years, he had heard mixed things about how his employees treated customers, especially those who seemed less fortunate. Some whispered that his restaurant staff looked down on the poor, treating them as if they didn't belong. Daniel wanted to find out the truth for himself. He watched the restaurant from a spot near the entrance, his stomach twisting with anticipation. Would his own employees offer him kindness? Or would they turn him away? His eyes landed on a waitress rushing between tables, balancing plates with practiced ease. She looked different from the others. Her uniform wasn't as crisp, and her shoes had seen better days. But her smile was genuine, and her laughter carried through the restaurant like a melody. Her name tag read Lena. Taking a deep breath, Daniel pulled his tattered jacket tighter around himself and stepped inside. The warm aroma of freshly baked bread and sizzling steaks filled the air. Customers chatted over their meals, their silverware clinking against fine china. Daniel walked hesitantly toward the counter. As expected, heads turned. Some customers frowned, others whispered. A few employees exchanged nervous glances. Then Lena noticed him. She tilted her head, studying him for a moment. Daniel braced himself for rejection. But then she smiled. "Hi there, sir. Can I help you?" Her voice was warm, welcoming. No trace of judgment. Daniel hesitated. I don't have any money. Just wondering if there's anything left over I could have. I can work for it, clean tables or something. A male waiter nearby scoffed. "We don't do charity here." Daniel's chest tightened. Before he could respond, Lena shot the waiter a glare. "That's not how we treat people," she said firmly. Then she turned back to Daniel, her eyes soft. "Wait here." Daniel watched in shock as she disappeared into the kitchen. A moment later, she returned with a steaming plate of food. "Here you go," she said, setting it down in front of him. "Eat first. We'll talk about work later." Daniel stared at the plate. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, warm bread. This was not just leftovers. This was a proper meal. His heart swelled. She didn't just pass the test. She was the kind of person he had always hoped to find. But the real test was just beginning. Daniel hesitated for a moment before picking up the fork. The food smelled incredible, and his stomach growled in anticipation. It had been a long time since he had eaten at his own restaurant, not as the CEO, but as a customer. Lena watched him with a kind smile. "Take your time. No rush." Daniel nodded and took his first bite. The mashed potatoes were buttery and smooth, the roast chicken tender and flavorful. He had always prided himself on the quality of his restaurants, but experiencing it like this, through the eyes of someone who had nothing, felt different. As he ate, he noticed other employees whispering among themselves. A few of them threw disapproving glances his way. One of them, the same male waiter who had scoffed earlier, muttered loud enough for him to hear. "I don't get why she's wasting food on him." Lena shot him another sharp glare. "Because he's hungry, Jake. That's reason enough." Jake rolled his eyes and walked away, but Daniel made a mental note of his name. He had always believed that how people treated those in need said a lot about their character. Jake had failed the test miserably. Lena sat down across from him, resting her chin on her hand. "What's your name?" Daniel thought for a moment before replying. "Dan. Nice to meet you, Dan." "I'm Lena." He smiled slightly. "Nice to meet you too." "What's your story?" she asked gently. "If you don't mind me asking." Daniel hesitated. He had prepared a backstory for his disguise, but looking into Lena's genuine eyes, he found himself wanting to be honest. "I've had a rough time," he admitted. "Made some mistakes. Lost my way. Just trying to figure things out now." Lena nodded, as if she understood. Well, you're not alone. We all go through hard times. Her words hit deeper than he expected. For a billionaire who had everything, loneliness was something he had battled for years. You said you'd let me work for this meal, Daniel reminded her, testing her further. Lena grinned. You don't have to, but if you really want to, how about helping me clear some tables? The night went on, and Daniel continued to help Lena around the restaurant. He noticed how she treated every customer with warmth, even the ones who were rude or impatient. She worked hard, barely stopping to rest, yet she never complained. At one point, he saw her slip a few dollars into the tip jar for another waitress who had been struggling that night. It was clear Lena wasn't just kind when people were watching. She was kind at her core. By the end of the shift, Daniel was exhausted. He wasn't used to manual labor, but it felt good, real. Lena wiped her forehead and sighed. Thanks for helping out, Dan. I really appreciate it. Daniel smiled. No, thank you for everything. She shrugged. Just doing what's right. Daniel studied her for a moment. He had met thousands of people in his life, business moguls, celebrities, world leaders. But none of them had impressed him the way Lena had tonight. And now he had a decision to make. Would he reveal his identity? Or would he wait a little longer? One thing was certain. This night wasn't over yet. As the last customers left the restaurant, Lena stretched her arms and let out a tired sigh. Another day, another shift, she murmured with a smile. Daniel wiped his hands on a napkin, still pretending to be just a homeless man who had helped out. Long day. She laughed softly. Always. But it pays the bills. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching her. You like working here? Lena hesitated, then nodded. I do, but I won't lie, it's tough. Long hours, difficult customers, and, well, she glanced toward the kitchen, where Jake and a few other employees were chatting and laughing. Not everyone here is nice. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had seen firsthand how some of the staff treated people they thought were beneath them. Then why stay? He asked. Lena sighed, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Because I need the job. I'm saving up for something important. What's that? She hesitated for a moment before answering. My little brother, Liam, has medical bills. Our parents passed away when we were young, so it's just me and him. He has a heart condition, and I'm trying to afford a better treatment for him. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Lena wasn't just kind, she was selfless. Working tirelessly not for herself, but for her brother. Before he could respond, the restaurant manager, Mr. Collins, walked in. He was a middle-aged man with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Daniel. What is this man still doing here? Collins asked, his tone laced with disapproval. Lena immediately stepped forward. He helped out today. He wasn't in the way. Collins scoffed. This is a fine dining establishment, not a shelter. His eyes flickered to Daniel's worn-out clothes. I don't want customers seeing this. Daniel clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. But he forced himself to stay calm. Lena, however, didn't hold back. With all due respect, sir, Dan worked harder than some of the actual employees today. Collins folded his arms. That doesn't matter. He doesn't belong here. Daniel saw the flash of frustration in Lena's eyes. She wanted to argue, but she knew she couldn't afford to lose her job. Before she could say anything else, Daniel made his decision. He straightened his posture, his entire demeanor shifting. No longer slouched and timid. Now, he stood with the quiet authority of a man used to being in charge. And then he spoke. Actually, Mr. Collins, he said, his voice steady, I own this restaurant. Silence. Lena blinked, confused. Wait, what? Collins paled. What kind of joke is this? Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He took out his black credit card, one with the Kingston's fine dining logo embossed on it. Then, he pulled off the beanie, revealing his neatly styled dark hair. Collins' face drained of color. Mr. Kingston. Lena took a step back, looking between Daniel and the credit card. You're Daniel Kingston? Daniel nodded. Yes. And for the past day, I've been here undercover. watching, testing the kindness of my employees. He turned to Lena. And you, Lena, passed with flying colors. Lena still looked stunned. I don't know what to say. Collins, however, was sweating. Sir, I had no idea. If I had known. That's exactly the problem. Daniel cut him off. You shouldn't treat people with kindness only when you think they're important. A good business isn't just about food and profits. It's about people. And from what I've seen, not everyone here understands that. Collins swallowed hard. I can fix this. Daniel crossed his arms. No. You've already shown your true colors. He turned to the other employees. And Jake, who had been silent the whole time, stiffened. Daniel gave him a cold, assessing look. You're fired. Jake's face twisted in anger. You can't be serious. Daniel raised an eyebrow. I don't tolerate disrespect toward customers or employees. Collins tried to protest. Sir, maybe we should. Daniel cut him off again. And you, Collins? Consider this your final warning. Either change the way you run this place, or I'll replace you too. Collins nodded frantically. Understood, sir. Daniel then turned to Lena, his expression softening. And you're the kind of person this restaurant needs more of. Lena still looked overwhelmed. I was just doing the right thing. That's exactly why you deserve more. Daniel took a deep breath. Lena, how would you like a promotion? A management position with a better salary? Her eyes widened. You're serious? Completely, he said. You deserve to be in a position where you can make a real difference. And if you ever need help with your brother's medical bills, consider it covered. Lena gasped. I can't accept that. It's too much. Daniel smiled. It's not charity. It's appreciation for someone with a good heart. Tears welled in Lena's eyes. I don't know how to thank you. You already have, Daniel said, by proving that kindness still exists in this world. As he looked around the restaurant, he realized that this test had changed more than just his view of his employees. It had changed him. And for the first time in years, Daniel Kingston felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope.